I really just want somebody who's going to aggressively fight for me in court. Is that too much to ask?
Filing my cases shouldn't be that difficult. There's got to be an easier way.
Nothing frustrates me more than having to wait for my attorney to call me back. I need them now.
What I really need from my law firm is someone who can provide my staff training so we actually can stay out of trouble.
When you have property management problems, we have your solutions. This is the Zona Law Group podcast with the experienced attorneys from Zona Law.
Welcome back to the Zona Law podcast. I am Mark Zinman, and I'm joined here today by the fabulous Matt Koglemeier. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well, Mark. Happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure to be in front of the camera, back in the podcast studio, and updating clients. So the question is, what are we discussing today?
There's a lot of exciting things going on. You know, we've started out and we've done a number of podcasts on the CDC moratorium, how the pandemic is affecting this industry, and what the courts have decided both in Maricopa County, Pima County, and outlying other areas. We've got some exciting things going on. One of them is things that are happening in Pima County, and also a recent Texas District Court decision as it pertains to the CDC moratorium order. And so there's a lot of things that have happened and a lot of things that are still up in the air.
So this should be the beginning of the light at the end of the tunnel on Texas case, right?
We certainly hope so, because it was a modicum of common sense that finally came out of one of our federal courts with respect to this issue. And Mark, there's been a lot of arguments concerning the constitutionality of what the CDC has done in their moratorium. What issue, what right do the feds have in this issue? What rights do the states have? And we've got a judge now that, at least for the Eastern District of Texas, has really kind of laid out some things that seem to make sense to our industry and doesn't forget a very important document called the Constitution. So why don't you tee it up, kind of tell us what happened with that federal district court decision, and we'll talk about the ramifications and the effect of that.
Sure. Throughout this whole time, people have to remember, it's now been a year of a moratorium, starting with Governor Ducey's last one, March 24th of 2020. And people have always argued, well, how is this constitutional? How is this possible? Well, it's really not supposed to be, but until a court finds something unconstitutional, you abide by it and go through the process. So last Thursday, as Matt said, a judge out of the Eastern District of Texas found that the CDC eviction moratorium is unconstitutional, which I think for a lot of property owners in the country is probably the greatest thing they've heard in over a year. But it's not that simple, right? It doesn't necessarily apply to everybody off the bat. Like, where do we go from here? What's the steps?
Well, the question is, how far-reaching is this decision?
Yep.
Does it apply to the 4 entities that were involved in it? Does it apply nationwide? We're talking about a district court judge in the Eastern District of Texas, and what kind of effect that's going to have, what kind of a ripple effect that's going to have throughout our entire country, and who's going to follow it and who's not.
Yeah, so when we say the Eastern District, the district court, that is a federal judge. So they're interpreting the federal Constitution. They have a wide amount of authority. They're appointed for life. I mean, it's an impressive position, we'll put it that way. The question is, though, so what happened in this court? They said it's unconstitutional. What they said is because that the federal government has to have some sort of basis when they enact laws. And the one they were addressing here was what's called the Commerce Authority, which is interstate actions. Like if you take drugs is the easiest example always, is drugs travel between Arizona to Nevada. Okay, well, that affects interstate commerce. Therefore, the feds can touch it, and they can have, federal laws on drugs.
Well, let me ask you this question, though. How does evictions touch on interstate commerce?
I've been trying to figure out that answer for now a year. But basically, the government's argument was that when people are evicted, they then move between states. And what I love about this order is, I think this is the first time I've seen it from a judge. This judge was like, okay, I've looked at the numbers. Yes, people obviously move when they've been evicted. Doesn't mean they're going to another state, though. And the judge actually gave the example of people when they divorce are more likely to move interstate than they are for an eviction, which is like, well, are the feds going to get into the divorce business then?
Well, that's the point. As we know, family law divorces are governed by states, not by the federal government, because I think we all recognize that it either has no impact or not a significant impact on any interstate commerce issue.
Yeah, so the judge said it's unconstitutional. Now, what usually happens at that point, a judge would say, okay, I'm going to enter an injunction saying across the country it's unconstitutional, CDC can't apply, we're just going to throw it out. Now, this judge stopped short of saying that because the Department of Justice came in, the DOJ represents the CDC, gotta love acronyms and trying to keep up with them. But the DOJ said, Your Honor, if you rule against us, we're going to respect your decision. And based on that, the judge said, okay, well, I'm not going to enter an injunction. Well, I don't know in a legal world what respect a decision means.
I guess that's all depends on what your definition of is.
So over the weekend, the DOJ came out and said, you know what, we respect the decision, but we disagree with it. We think it's wrong. We're going to appeal it, and we think it only applies to the plaintiffs in that case. They don't even think it applies to all of the Eastern District of Texas. They definitely don't think it applies to Texas, and they absolutely don't think it applies to the whole country. So it's a couple plaintiffs?
Well, that's an interesting thing because last time I saw the Constitution was applied federally, applied to all of the states.
It's a handy way of doing it.
And we have a federal judge that says it's unconstitutional, and he was kind enough not to take that extra step you mentioned.
Yeah.
But to do that, then he, as you mentioned, he said, CDC and through the DOJ said, we'll honor it. And I guess the question is, what does that mean? I think we're getting an idea right now of what that means.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not going to follow it across the country. So the question, I think, will be, and that what we're waiting for here is the plaintiffs in that case, the property owners' attorneys, are they going to go back and seek that injunction and say, you know what, it applies across the country, we want a clear statement to that effect. And until we've got that, we're a little in legal limbo, and it's up to the states. It seems like they're all going to do their own thing as to whether they think the CDC still applies or not. Because I think there's a good argument that it should not apply whatsoever.
Yeah, and then we're going to have our Arizona Supreme Court that then puts in their 2 cents as to how far-reaching this is going to be and whether or not we're going to apply it in our state.
Yeah.
And where that's going to land, who knows?
So the answer for the Zona Law viewers here today is absolutely a federal judge has found that the CDC order is unconstitutional. How it is going to apply on individual evictions, we're waiting to see. And then ultimately, when that case gets appealed, well, it'll go to the Fifth Circuit, appeal past that to the Supreme Court. Once we get to the Supreme Court, that's where really the decisions are made, of course.
That's where the rubber will totally meet the road, and we'll try to figure out where we're at, and we'll have a few more answers for you. Right now, it raises so many questions.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, it's truly, thankfully, we got a glimmer of hope, property rights back, that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. And that's what really, I mean, the greatest quote I think that came out of that ruling was, yes, COVID-19 persists, but so does the Constitution. And that's, I think, how you and I have looked at it this whole time.
God bless the judge for that one.
Exactly. We will update you when there's more information on the ruling out of Texas. But until then, thank you so much for joining us on the Zona Law Podcast.
Thank you very much.